Hello and welcome to Change is Possible podcast. My name is Ani Filipova and I'm your host. When I left my banking career to try something new, the number one question everyone asked me was, how did you find the courage? The thing is, it's not about the courage. It is about knowing what you want and planning for it. That's why I started this podcast, to help you make your career change possible. Each of our guests have done a successful career change, and we are going to discuss practical advice, actionable tips, and inspirational stories that can help you to get unstuck and transition into work that you love. Let's get started. Hi everyone, my guest today is Eugene Liang. I met Eugene more than 6 months ago to advise him on a product he was working on. He's someone who has spent 10 years of his career in some of the top Asia tech unicorns, and then he decided to move to banking. Eugene worked in Lazada, Alibaba, Grab, and Ofo, just to name a few. He enjoys the 0 to 1 process from ideation to go-to-market, regardless if it is established company or startup. He is experienced with gaming, gamification, e-commerce, bike sharing, and ride-hailing related industries. Today, he is using all his previous tech experience in a different industry, banking. Outside of banking, his interest is in NFTs, Web3, cryptocurrencies, and blockchains. Hey, Eugene, great to have you as my guest. A little bit of a different amplitude today. How are you?
Hi, Annie. Glad to be here. Excited and really looking forward to this podcast. Yeah, I'm good today. Great Sunday afternoon.
In Singapore, one of my favorite cities. Right. So we started with Singapore. So tell me a little bit about how it started. What were your interests when it came to universities? Why did you choose a double major in business and computer science?
I had a lot of interest back in the days, back in university. But these are largely within the scope of technology and business. I always enjoyed building products, ranging from websites to basic applications. So back in Singapore, we have to go through the A-levels examination. So I was an art student back in junior college. So doing a business degree in university appears to be a natural move. There was this one particular business class where we have to go through different Harvard business case studies. And then I realized that most of the company founders in the case studies have some form of computer science background. In fact, many founders I came across back then generally have some form of computer science background. And they actually leverage on their programming skills to build something, which eventually resulted in a company. So there was a time where I thought I should take up one more degree in computer science. Overall, it was a tough journey doing 2 degrees, especially I do not have any programming experience or engineering background prior to the degree. But I'm fortunate that the professors and classmates were super helpful in helping me getting through the program.
That's interesting. So I never thought about it. Yeah, that's true. Many of the founders have actually some tech programming skills. Yeah, that's a great observation. And what was your first job? Why did you choose to work there? Was it what you expected and imagined about work?
After graduating from college, my first few jobs were all engineering related. In fact, front-end programmer to be specific. So in this role, my job is to program user interfaces and sometimes provided design input on how interfaces could work. So I chose to work in this field because I really enjoyed building products and I wanted to make use of the degrees which I've learned back in college. At the same time, during the time when I graduated from school, there was a lack of front-end programmers. So I guess I was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to develop applications as my first few jobs. Overall, I really enjoyed building products from an engineering perspective. Along the way, I discovered that it's even more exciting to see users using the product which I've built. So while building new applications are exciting, I discovered that a lot of effort in different companies, they often use it to maintain and debug existing features. So over time, I made it a point to understand from the end user's perspective when building products.
Interesting. I was always fascinated by tech unicorns. I never knew what is it to be in a tech unicorn. So that's my opportunity to ask you, what is it to work for a tech unicorn? And what kind of qualities people should have to start in a tech unicorn?
Well, it's a super exciting, exhilarating, and energizing. I got to know a lot of super smart and capable people that I continue to keep in touch with until today. So most of the folks in those companies, they generally have a shared vision and direction when it comes to building the future for the companies. I noticed that these folks who works or join startups or tech unicorns, they are typically, number one, self-starters. So these are people who can get started without explicit instructions or clear goals. Secondly, they have a bias towards execution. So the context is that most tech startups operate in unknown and fast-changing environments. Therefore, it's quite difficult to make long-term plans. Hence, folks who do well in these environments, they understand that execution is what helps the company to move to the next phase. So by executing, we can plan better. So that's the general idea. And the third point is that these people, they generally prefer a faster environment compared to, say, a corporate environment. So two examples would be how quickly we can make a decision and how quickly one releases new product features over a set time. I will also add that these folks are generally more straightforward when it comes to communication and problem solving.
I see. Okay, so self-starters, they are obsessed about execution and they're working in a fast-paced environment. Okay, these are the three things. Okay, interesting you said the straightforward regarding communication.
Yes.
I guess that moving from one industry to another made you realize how the communication goes. But so what makes you successful in a tech company? What kind of skills do you learn there? Yeah, we know now what are the qualities to join, and now how to be successful, and what do you learn in there?
Well, I think for a start, different skill sets are required for different stages of a company. So in general, you'll find that the skills you need for like a 0 to 1 startup will be quite different compared to a mature startup. So some variables that I will look at first would be the maturity of the company. Is it like a pre-seed or a seed stage? Is it in a Series A round or is it Series C and beyond? Also the type of things we're supposed to do in the startup. Are we launching something new in the company? Or are we launching a company by itself? Or are we even like scaling an existing product or feature? Then like the third point is actually the competitive environment that a company is in. For example, would it be in a new market? Is it heavily regulated? Is it a new demographic? So these are things which we consider before we try to understand what are the factors that make one successful. But there are like common observations which I had regarding people who do well in early stage companies. So in general, they tend to act and decide a lot faster compared to other folks in other companies. So in fact, one of my previous managers at Alibaba mentioned that good product managers tend to have faster decision-making capabilities, especially when there are a lot of unknowns. Secondly is that they have the ability to crystallize a goal amidst unclear circumstances. So they have this ability to intuitively know what constitutes success, and they also know what are the tangible metrics that define what this success means for the company and for the team. And last but not least, which is like a really rare ability, it will be to rallying people around a common goal. So some core skills that people will learn, I think there's like 2 of them. So number 1, it will be the ability to do more with less. So this is by nature of like startups and tech companies. They are not as well funded as compared to a corporate, for example. Therefore, in order to survive, they have no choice but to do more with less. So example, when I first started working on gaming and gamification initiatives, the team only had 2 engineers and 1 product operations. And just by that, we had to figure out how to build a product that has product market fit in Southeast Asia's e-commerce context. Then the second skill, I believe, is that you will learn to be a lot more efficient and have like quicker turnaround times. Most tech startups, they actually live and die by releasing new features or products. So everything moves a lot more quicker. So in the same role, we had a fairly aggressive product update schedule. On a weekly basis, we had minor changes to the product, and we have like a large feature releases every 2 weeks. On average, we were releasing like one mini game, almost like a monthly basis. So we kept up with that schedule for almost like 9 months to 12 months. So it was a pretty aggressive schedule.
I see. So when we say just a little bit more on the team, had 2 engineers and 1 product operations, and but you were supported by marketing and other stuff from the company, right? It's just that your team had such a small team, right?
Yeah, it was just a team. And actually like marketing and other like so-called functions, right? They are not tagged to the gaming unit. So we all had different roles to play. So the job is to simply find out what could work given this context. Yeah, so a lot of iterations in a very short amount of time.
I see. So far we're talking, and then the one thing that comes out often is time and quick turnarounds and taking quick decisions. So speed is very, very important, it turns out. You've changed several Asia tech giants. What made you move from one to another? And how did you look for opportunities? And I'm asking this question because if you have any tips for people how to search for a job in a tech unicorn and what do they have to look for, that will be very helpful.
Well, for a start, right, the tech industry changes relatively quickly compared to the banking industry, for example. So the moves were made in response to both environment changes and what might be a better fit for my career aspirations. In general, I tend to look at what value I can bring to the industry or company and what are the new skills I can build over time. I believe that both parties have to benefit from the switch in order for the hiring to be successful. So in terms of advice, I think most of the advice when it comes to searching for opportunities or moving within tech industries would be applicable. But 2 of the more valuable tips would be, number 1, having concrete outputs. So by concrete, I mean measurable outcomes and the contribution that you've made. So back in gaming, the KPIs I had are actually very concrete and measurable. So the 2 KPIs I had was, number 1, daily active users, and the second KPI was 7-day retention rate. So I found that having ownership and even achieving some of these KPIs really open up a lot more opportunities, especially down the road. And the skills you've learned can actually be applicable in other industries. Secondly, be willing to go the extra mile. So this will be useful, especially if you have not worked in the tech industry before. So for example, do we have any side project or side hustles that we can work on in your spare time to demonstrate certain value or skills that will be well perceived in the tech industry? One common example I came across is that people are often trying to move to programming or design related jobs. So some of these like side hustle or projects could actually be building an app to solve like your own problems, or even redesigning like a particular feature or app that you want to use. Yeah, so this would be my 2 tips.
Okay, that's great. So side hustle is actually quite a powerful one, because when you think about it, people start doing on the side something they really like. And then that can flourish. And in some time, you just end up with your side hustle as a main business. I've heard some examples, so that's very powerful too. What was your favorite job within the tech ecosystem? And if you can tell the listeners why this is your favorite job, that would be great.
Well, I think all the roles have, in a way, is a favorite because each of this job has its like best and like favorite moments. For example, when I first started as an engineer, I get to build products and bring ideas to life. Well, during my time in Grab, when I was a UX engineer, I was really fortunate to get the opportunity to prototype many different new features and conduct user research to see what could work in Southeast Asia. I think looking back and overall, I would see it in terms of the role that I've played. By far, I feel that product management is my favorite role, assuming that I have business-related KPIs. So product management is a unique role such that it really involves several skills at the same time. It is a test of strategic thinking within a given or proposed scope. We have to manage people who have differing goals. And lastly, we need to have the ability to break down a vision into digestible and executable tactics. I believe that product management actually represents life in general. And many skills that we learn in product management can be applied to our daily lives.
Absolutely. Product management involves, as you said, not only the engineer, but many other people. It's just the operations and marketing, training, client services, relationship management, everything is involved in the product management. It's a very, very interesting subject. And let's now go to the time when you decided to move to banking. This is quite an unusual move coming from companies like Grab and Alibaba. And what are the qualities that helped you get the job? And if you then talk about what did you need to prepare for this transition and how? If you can give some practical advice to people who would like to make the same career.
These are great questions. And definitely a lot to talk about this. Yeah. So, well, in the first place, I guess when I moved to banking, I was searching for opportunities in fintech in the first place. So I started off by looking at fintech where my previous manager in Alibaba, she was moved to Ant Financial. So I was kind of curious at why she was moved to Ant Financial. It was then I realized that, fintech is the real industry to go into, at least in Southeast Asia. So I started to keep a lookout for opportunities in fintech. So after some research, I noticed that all kinds of fintechs can be done in two ways. So it's either through you build a startup, or you do it within the traditional banks. So the startup way is all about growing quickly, capturing market share, and then we attempt to turn profitable through cost-cutting strategies or maximizing revenue streams. On the other hand, traditional banking, we have always been focused on making profits as quickly as we can, but it's in exchange for lower growth rates for the most part. Looking back, I've spent quite a bit of time in environments where growth rates are actually prioritized over profitability. So I thought it's kind of useful and maybe time for me to learn how to build a profitable business. But overall, I certainly have a much better understanding on what growth factors impact financial performance compared to, say, 2 years ago. I was fortunate enough to have the specific skills required to build and launch digital products. So I was kind of in the right place at the right time when the bank recruiter reached out to me. So since the banking industry is very different from consumer tech industries, I began researching on what are the norms in banking industries. So especially as to culture, communication, how things are done in the banks. So I'm very grateful that I found Eric Sim. So I think he was also in the podcast a few episodes earlier on. Yeah. So he provided a lot of useful inputs as to how banking industry works and what are some things I need to keep a lookout for and how things could be different compared to the tech industry.
Okay, so that's a great advice to start actually researching what is the industry you want to join doing and talk to people who have been there. And Eric is a great example. So you had how many? 12 years of career, right? So far?
Yeah, around there. Yeah, around there.
And what is a tough moment in your career when you had to draw on all your strengths to keep going? We generally don't share such failures or periods when we are down. We always talk about the great periods of our career. So what was a tough moment for you?
Well, there are several such moments. Many tough moments, as one moves around the industries. But I guess one in particular really stands out. And newsflash, there's no happy ending for this particular experience.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's regarding a bike sharing company that was really popular in the region. So I joined the company and in a couple of months, they just hit a major milestone in terms of an all-time high when it comes to daily rides. However, layoffs started happening within the next couple of months. So most of us were not prepared for sure, for the layoffs and the massive reduction in funding. At the same time, the company was also required to apply for a license in Singapore. So this licensing would increase operations costs and would also require further product development. Definitely, I wasn't expecting these things to happen when I decided to join the company. But given the circumstances, the only way for the company to continue survival in Singapore will be to ensure that we get the license. So the team in Singapore, with whoever is left in the company, so we got together and did whatever we could, ranging from finding bicycles on the street, learning how to switch our apps to developer mode. Yeah, because we simply ran out of like funds, not enough hands. So everyone in the company who is left, so we just went out to the streets and looked for a bicycle so that we can actually link each of the bike to like a registration number. So that was actually one of the core requirements by the regulations. So in the end, we did get the license, but a few months down the road, the license was revoked simply because there was a lack of funds to continue operations. So for me, it was like a great lesson in terms of how strong growth and retention matrix doesn't really mean profitability. If anything, right, I thought that this episode of the career certainly made me always keeping a lookout on unit economics whenever I can. So there's no happy ending here. The company is no longer around, but great lessons and great friendships built. Yeah.
Wow. I've never experienced anything like this in my career.
Yeah.
When the company disappears.
Yeah, it was quite terrifying. Yeah.
And this happened for how long? How long were you there?
All this happened within less than a year. So it was, everything just came very quickly. So it hit an all-time high, and then we started laying off people in large groups of people. So it was like a pretty
unpleasant,
good experience, I would say. Yeah, but it really took a lot of like a courage to like try to like stay around. So as one of the product people left in the region, my job was to try to find out like if there's anything else we could do. So in the end, we kind of find out that, maybe the bike sharing industry, there are certain mechanics which makes it quite difficult to like scale or even become profitable. Yeah, so that was like during those days. Things could have been different now, but I'll like suspend my judgment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so we are at the end of the podcast. And always at the end, I ask my guests to give the listeners 3 key takeaways of advice to have in mind when they plan a career change. In your case, I mean, it's from the tech industry to banking or within the tech industry. What would be your 3 key advices to people?
Okay. So I think like the first point would be keep an open mind. If you asked me like 10 years ago, would I expect myself to join a bank? My answer is probably no. Yeah. But at the same time, we never really know if our skill sets could complement adjacent industries or even departments. Sometimes a career change can happen within the same company or like in simply complementary industries. Having worked in fast-growing consumer tech industries, understanding how user retention and engagement can be done, the same principles can actually be applied to the banking industry. So I guess that'll be my first piece of advice. Secondly, it will be through like networking. So with people comes opportunities. And networking can come in multiple forms. In my case, it was through moving across different companies. So over time, you'll find that the world is really a small place. In Southeast Asia, it's even a smaller place. So quite a few of like such opportunities actually came from ex-colleagues or folks who I used to work with. Then last but not least, do bring along like tangible or even intangible value to the new employer. It could be skills or networks or domain knowledge, which is like not replicable that easily. So I think in my case, I have like good knowledge when it comes to building digital products, understanding how user retention could be done. So I thought these are like a tangible value that can bring to the new employer. Yeah, so this will be my 3 advice for folks who plan a career change.
Thank you, Eugene. That was very interesting. I personally learned a lot. I wish you a great day and all the best. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Annie. I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, bye.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to be notified of future episodes, please hit the subscribe button. I would love to hear your feedback. Please write a review whenever you can. Thank you and have a great day.